got to room with Congressman Lewis. So paint for us a picture of a young John Lewis when you all first met.
Well, one advantage that we had was that we were both from the South, and we had the experience of growing up in a segregated situation. So we had something in common. So that's why we were able to relate to each other and talk about what happened even in our early childhood, where we had experiences where we challenged the segregation system. In fact, I had sit-ins in Tampa, Florida, Ybor City, when I was just 7 years old. And I used to be Mr. Coffee. I'd go one block over to the commercial area, and I would be able to take orders for coffee for the merchants who were actually opening up their shops. And I would go back to the restaurant, Las Novedades, and I would order the coffee for the merchants. And this was before I went to school every morning. Okay, yeah. So I leaned against the stool while I was waiting, and eventually I put my hip on the stool, and then I just slid on the stool while the waiter was fixing the coffee. He stared at me through the mirror, and we never said anything. And from that day on, I sat on the stools.
Wow.
So I had an experience of sitting on the stools at a very early age. So John Lewis had some challenges that he had in Troy, Alabama, there near Troy. So I had a great opportunity for us to share with each other. And we really became very good friends. And he tried to get me to go to these workshops. And I didn't have time to go to workshops because I was always working, just like I was Mr. Coffee when I was a little boy. I'd get up 5:30 in the morning to go get that coffee. And I was a janitor to the second floor. I was assistant librarian and ended up being a librarian because the librarian had complicated troubles during her pregnancy. But anyway, John Lewis said, listen, you need to come to these workshops. James Austin Jr. was doing the workshops. And I just said, I don't have time for that. He said, oh, this is what we talk about all the time. I said, well, okay, I'll just go so I won't have to hear your mouth. And I went and I got stuck. This is exactly what we wanted to do, what we talked about. How could we challenge the system in such a way? So it was not like no coincidence for us.
Right.
We were ready. We were on track with it. One thing I want to say, because we were going across this bridge, and what was that all about? Jimmy Lee Jackson had been shot and killed by state troopers, okay, over in Perry County. That's why we were going from Selma to Montgomery. The protest to the governor.
Right.
Because the state troopers were the ones who killed Jimmy Lee Jackson, and they were also the ones who helped to stop us from going, okay? So the city limits of Selma was on the other side of the bridge. That's why the state troopers didn't stop us before we got on the bridge.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So it's important to understand the context and the history of what the march was all about. So it was about protesting a killing of a black man who was trying to protect his mother on a night march over in Perry County. Why did they have the night march? Because James Orange was in jail and they were marching so the media would follow them to the jail and hopefully protect James Orange.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Reverend Lafayette. I just want to let our viewers know we are seeing the caisson head to the bridge right now. They will approach that bridge, as I understand it. They will hold there for one moment. I don't know if our viewers were able to see, but as the body traveled, viewers, there were people following the body along the journey to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Still with me is historian and my good friend Jelani Cobb. Jelani, you just heard the Reverend talk about why they were marching to protest the death of a black man. So it still creates this wrinkle in time as we transition John Lewis's body. What does this mean to you as we see this happening, given the political landscape today and just the cultural landscape as dead bodies still bedeck our screens, sadly? What do you make of this historic moment?
Yeah, I'm very glad that Dr. Lafayette mentioned Jimmy Lee Jackson, who was a civil rights martyr that not enough people know about. But and you see on the screen is the waiting for a moment with the remains of Congressman Lewis there. It's just really, the fact is that each one of these rights that we exercise, that any opportunity that we've had to participate in democracy in a meaningful way, every single one of those rights has been drenched in the blood of people who have sacrificed in order to achieve them. And we can scarcely turn without seeing another instance of it.
So we're seeing right now they're holding for that moment. We're going to listen in to watch this moment play out in real time. I just want to set the scene. Behind the casket is John Miles, that's the congressman's son, and Freddie Lewis, his brother, his other brother Sam Lewis, Grant Lewis, and his sister Rosa Tyner. And Michael Collins was his chief of staff on Capitol Hill, but he was so much more. They were like family together during their time on Capitol Hill. Still with me is Brittany Packnett Cunningham and the civil rights leader and activist, Reverend Dr. Bernard Lafayette Jr. We only have about a few seconds left, but Reverend Lafayette, I just wanted to talk to you because a lot of people who are just learning about the movement don't know, but this was not the only instance of violence that Congressman Lewis faced. This is where he suffered a skull fracture, but you talked about you having cracked ribs and that Congressman John Lewis was repeatedly struck. This lifelong commitment to nonviolence, where does that come from? Or where did that come from, I should say, with the congressman?
It is something that happened when he was very young, and he made that commitment that he did not want to live under those circumstances, and he also believed that they could be changed, and that's why he applied, for a library card, and he also, wanted to go to college there in Alabama, and he ended up at American Baptist Theological Seminary. So it was something that was in his blood, it was in his conscience, it was in his spirit. And while he tried to persuade others to also join him.
Reverend Lafayette, I'm so sorry, I hate to interrupt you. We just want to listen in on what's happening right now.
Yes, that's fine.
right over my head.
What we're seeing, the body has just been loaded back into the hearse. You see the car surrounded by onlookers and supporters, and hopefully you heard the crowd singing spirituals and hymnals. Most prominent of them, "Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Round." Still with me is Brittany Packnett Cunningham. Brittany, you get the last word on this very somber moment.
I think we all just heard the ending of one of those march songs that Congressman Lewis's generation taught us how to sing. And it ends, "Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free." When Congressman Lewis and Reverend Vivian passed on the exact same day, I was reminded of our collective privilege and responsibility to fight for justice and for freedom. We are privileged and blessed that John Lewis did not die on that bridge, but that he lived to be our elder and pass on the wisdom of this work. Our elders become our ancestors to remind us to be free. So the persistent question that we all need to ask ourselves every single day is, what kind of ancestor will we be? What a mighty thing it is to have seen our now ancestor cross the very bridge where he almost lost his life and cross it in victory. And as we close, we have to remember that the only way that we can walk victoriously across the bridges that tried to bury us is to every single day practice the discipline of courage. That is what John Lewis did. That is what we are all called to do.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Brittany. John Lewis tweeted in 2018, "Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get into trouble, necessary trouble." That does it for me. Thank you to all my guests for joining me this last hour, and Alex Witt picks up our coverage right now.